Okay, we are live on YouTube and I have also started the recording. Great. Okay, let me share my screen and please let me know once it is visible. Sai, is it visible?
Yeah, very well. Yeah, I can see. Others?
Uh,
I think they should be able to see. Oh, yeah, everyone.
okay, great. All right, so let's kickstart the session 2 of Karate DSL API services testing. So we are in the week 2. So what happened between last week and this week is that we have introduced our Meetup platform and we call it as TDG, which stands for Testing and DevOps Group, where we are going to post all the upcoming sessions, both live as well as workshops and mini workshops as well. So a little intro about that. So one second, I don't know where I placed that. Okay. Anyhow, we will give that at the end. Looks like I need to pull that. So this week, as you know, we are supposed to kickstart session 2. So let's. So people who missed session 1. So a quick introduction. So this is going to be a series on Karate DSL, which is an API testing as well as UI testing framework that helps to easily perform your day-to-day activities around API automation as well as UI automation. So we kickstarted this on last Saturday, and this is the session 2. In session 1, we have covered very intro of very basics of karate, but again, all those things will be covered in this session as well. All right. So said that, a quick intro about the presenters. Sai is my friend. He's into automation architect, and my name is Khaja. I'll be your host as well, and I'm also into automation architect. So more about Sai, he'll explain on that. So a very high agenda of the Karate DSL API automation series. So we started with introduction last week, as I mentioned. Then we are going to cover the basics. Most of the basics will be covered this week, and whatever that will be left over will be covered in the following week. That is on next Sunday. Then we are going to talk about the intermediate and advanced concepts of karate, followed by UI automation with karate, as well as some other miscellaneous concepts are there, like contract consumer-driven contract testing, running karate in Docker containers, running karate on CI/CD pipelines, etc. All those things will be covering in miscellaneous concepts. Said that this is the session 1, which we have covered in last week, as I mentioned earlier. So we covered what exactly is an API. So we have started from the very basics, like what is an API, what is the difference between an API and a web service, what are the different tools that are available for API testing, where does Karate stand in compared to the most famous API testing tools like REST Assured or Postman. So in session 2, we are going to cover these things, and I'll hand it over to Sai here. So Sai, I'm stopping sharing the screen.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Kaja. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Sai, and as Kaja mentioned, that I'm the part of this. I'm one of the presenter and co-host for this, and we are conducting karate, sessions and many more sessions in future. But at the moment, karate DSL with for UI and for API and UI. And so last week we had a good session. So from today session onwards, we will get into more detail about karate, how to deal with karate, how to work with the some of the standard get post APIs and write DSL, how to write the karate DSL, how to do assertions and many more things like that. So today will be like we'll be going a little more fran than the basics what we've seen, or the introduction what we talked about it. Today we'll talk like how to write get and post and the keywords and things like that. So yeah, as I about me, I'm an automation architect working with one of the top IT services company.
Sai, can you share it?
No, not yet. I'll be sharing now in a minute. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so about me, I'm with one of the IT services company. I'm working as a test automation architect. And yeah, so that's all about me. And let's get into the session. I'm sharing my screen now. Should be able to see.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So this, yeah, we this was like last thing, and we gone through some of the topics. So today we will get into this samples, get requests and things like that. So first, let me start up with the creating an karate project. So before we go there, I wanted to show you the karate API documentation. It's really nice. So that we get an idea what is all about this. So I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm not going to run through the entire documentation, but we'll go through what is this, the karate API testing, and the quick start and things like that. Yeah. So we have like, can you see my screen? Right, Kaja? Can you see my screen?
Yes, Sai, I can see
Oh,
it.
okay,
Yes.
cool. Yeah, fine. Yeah. So we have a karate can be, you can start using Maven. You can use even Maven or Gradle, or that's the standard options we have it out there. We will first take a look at the Maven. For simplicity, everybody is aware of using Maven, so let's go with Maven. If you're coming from a background where you've been using Gradle, yeah, you can also try with Gradle, and you can try creating a karate API project, and you can move on from there. So let's look at the Maven thing. So this is how the command you have, like this is a Maven creating a project. You need to give this archetype and the group ID, the artifact ID, and things like that. This is a archetype. Group ID is pretty much important, so that is what we should aware of it. This is what is the domain, the namespace, and it pulls all the artifacts from the Maven repository. So what we're going to do is we'll just copy this command and we'll do a little bit of modification, like we wanted to have a different artifact ID and version and things like that. So we will not be able to teach you the Maven because it's the Maven command. This is a syntax what the Maven is looking for. So if you don't know anything about Maven, don't worry about it. You can just go to the Apache, Maven, and you can take a look at what is all about this, the commands and things like that. So I'll post that link maybe later, but yeah, feel free to take a look at the Apache Maven commands. So let me copy the command and try to create a project now. So what we're going to do now, the very first step is I have created a command last week, and for some reason my Maven it did not work, and now I fixed that. Let's create a project using Maven. So let me paste the command in a text editor. So let me paste the command. And so this is how the command is. I'm just trying to change few, some group ID. I would say, okay, testing or tdg.demo or karate demo. Okay, now we say karate. This is a API testing or karate DSL test. Okay. Now I'll just copy this command and I go here and I paste the command here. Now, before I paste the command, let me create a folder because I need to create the folder. So let's create a folder. We say karate demo project is created. Now let's get into the karate demo project. So let me know if you're not able to see my, if the font is very small, please, raise a, just let me know. I'll increase the font size.
Sai, it is mixing with the background, so maybe you can minimize that background.
Oh, okay. Let me minimize this. Is it better or still bad? Okay, let me.
Or maybe you can maximize the terminal
Okay,
itself.
fine. Is it better?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Yes, so now what we're going to do is we are in the karate demo project, and let's run this command. One important about the command is we're using something called the version. If you look at the version, that is 0.9.6. So this is the latest version of the karate DSL. If you so we when we started doing this in the last, I think we were on the RC4 candidate. So don't worry, 0.9.6.RC4, but this one we are looking at the 0.9.6. So don't get confused. There is no change. There are not many changes. That was a release candidate, and the 0.9.6 is the basically release. It is like fully released, and it's released for public, or anybody can start using it now. So that's the 0.9. This is the latest version from Karate. Now let's run this. So it may take a few seconds, maybe, or maybe a minute or so. My bandwidth is internet is a bit flaky, but it should work. Yeah, so it's kind of working. So it's almost done. So we just have to give the command, let the Maven to do the job. And while it is doing job, so let me open up the cancel, and I'll go back to the some important some other concepts which I would like to talk. So yeah, it is. Okay, why is that? Oh. It's missing. Okay, so 1 second. So just wanted to bring this atop. Karate DSL 0.9.6 archetype is all okay. Maybe there's a space. This is fine. This is all good. Archetyped. Maybe an archetype generate. Okay, let's give it another shot. It's missing and no catalog is found. Okay, so that's fine. So let's do this way. So if it is complaining like this, I'll just copy it again. And yeah, let's do another exercise of like this. And so we just delete and do this way. So give a space, remove there's a backslash, and remove this, and put the cursor, give a space. It's karate architect type, and this is the standard thing. So let me increase the font a bit. 18. All right. Okay, group ID artifact this, and remove this, and bring the command again here. And here, this the last JVM argument like this. Okay. Now here I'm just saying com.tddg.karate or demo, I say. And here my project name is karate DSL testing something. Okay, just DSL demo. Now let's copy the command, Control C, and I'm gonna paste it CLS again. Sorry, CLR. I'm on the been used to this. Now let's try this again. Let's Control V. All right, so let's try this and see what will happen. Architect type does not exist. Desired architect does not exist.
Put that dot after 6. 0.9.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh, shoot. Sorry. Yeah, I know. Okay. Silly mistake. Thank you. Yeah, now it is. Yeah, I think this is what is complaining. Dot six is missing. Okay. Yeah. So I just say enter. This is enter. Yeah, it's finished. Cool. So now once we generate this and you get the, the build is successful, and we have the demo project created in this particular folder, the Karate demo project. We have the Karate DSL demo. Now, so let's take a look at this, the Karate demo project, which we created now. So let us import, before we import, I just want to show you what we have. So we have pretty standard examples. So this is how you get to see in the project structure on the in the project which is created by the Maven archetype, the Karate archetype. So you will not have any main there. You'll have only the Maven SRC test, because the idea here is we are writing all the feature files and the scenarios under the test folder. It is not required for us to write something in SRC main Java. So everything will be in SRC test Java. So we don't see any SRC test Java. So that's the reason we only see SRC test Java. And you get some samples like example and a feature file and things like that. And this is the another file, which we will talk about it in the next few minutes. This is a config.js file if you want to run your test cases or the feature files on a various environments. Like if you want to run it on a QA, if you want to run it on a production or stage, so you can convert it there. All right. So for talk about the editor. So I use IntelliJ IDEA. This is the community edition I'm using. If you're having Eclipse, you still free to use Eclipse. If you have any other editor, Atom or any other editor you're using, yeah, please continue to use that. There is no there's no compulsion that you have to use only that editor. But I would recommend to use IntelliJ IDE because of some it gives you some nice IntelliSense, and it works very well in IntelliJ IDEA. I think most of the people are already aware of it. But I would recommend, but it is not mandatory that you have to use Karate. Sorry, if you have to, it's not mandatory that you have to use IntelliJ IDEA. So let's import the project which I've created. So let's import that open project, and I have it here. Git Karate demo. Is the first session on Karate? Okay. All right. Hey, Kaja, I'm getting a pop-up. It's saying about the poll. How do I?
Yeah, you can close it.
Okay, fine. I got it. Yeah, I can close it. Yeah. Okay, so now let's take that project and we'll put it into new window. Let me bring this to the top. All right. So it's resolving the dependencies, downloading the Maven project, and all that is done here. And we get to see, yeah, just almost done. So yeah, so the same structure what we seen earlier on the in the folder in the Finder or in the file system. We don't have any SRC main. I mentioned we have only SRC test Java, and this is what we get to see over here. We have a sample feature file which is shipped, which will be given by the Karate project, the default feature file, and you have a runner file, how you want to run the test cases or how you want to run the the feature files from the code. So we will talk about it. So let's not get into this the runner at the moment. Okay, so one other thing, let's look at the some of the topics I just wanted to take a talk about it. So in this we have a 2.1 and 2.2. So what we're going to talk about in 2.1 is we're going to talk about the creating project Maven command line, configuring ID and stuff like that. So we'll first look at the how do we configure ID and some tools. So once I install the, once I open the or imported the project, the Karate project onto this, and this is how I get to see. But if you see this one, this particular user.feature file, it is showing a nice colors. It's showing in a blue and in the black, and it is not complaining about any missing step definitions and things like that. So the reason is I have like installed a plugin in IntelliJ. If you're coming from Eclipse background, you have to install a plugin, or you can go to the marketplace in Eclipse and install the plugin, the Cucumber plugin. If you are on IntelliJ IDEA, you have to go to the plugins folder and install the Cucumber plugin. So you will not ideally see this kind of format, this so the kind of format we get to see, you won't get to see that. So before that, you have to install the plugin. So let's look at what is the plugin I'm talking about. So I'm on Mac, so you can go to the IntelliJ preferences. If you're on the Windows, you can go to File, and you get to see preferences somewhere over here. And let's go to the preferences. And once you see the preferences, this is what it looks like. You click on the plugins, and you have like what are the plugins available in the marketplace. So for me, like I've already installed Gherkin and Cucumber for Java, and that is the reason it's showing that these are the plugins installed. If you go to the marketplace here, you get to see a lot of plugins which we may not require for this session. And so what we want to do is we wanted to take this go to the installed plugins and see what are the plugins we have installed at the moment. So one is a Gherkin plugin. If you install Gherkin plugin, you don't have to install the Gherkin plugin explicitly. If you install Cucumber for Java, so that's fine. Once you install it, you will get to see by default this Gherkin also will be installed. If it is not installed, you can go to the plugins and again search for the Gherkin and install it. So since I've already installed it, I'm not going to do that again. So let me click on cancel. And once you install it, the IntelliJ will ask you, do you want to restart the editor or the IDE? So go for that, restart the IDE, and you get to see the structure or the colors and things like that. So basically, it allow you to really see that, okay, this language is being understood by the IntelliJ IDE. That is all about, having a plugin installed. Now, why do I recommend IntelliJ? The reason is now let's say I want to write a new scenario, or if I wanted to write a new feature file. So for some reason, I am not able to see one, when I right click and here I should see some dot feature file. I think it's probably because of the, my latest 2020 community edition version, and the plugin version is, I think it's not allowing enough for some reason, because I have it in my other machine on the Windows machine. I can get to see like substep.feature file over here. If you don't have it, don't worry. You can just say, click on file and you can just say demo. You can just say demo or demo get dot feature file like this. You can create like this as well. Or you can just control C and control V. Even that is also is possible. So yeah. But if you install the plugin and if the version matches correctly, you should definitely see over here a dot feature file extension. So that is all you can see in the context menu. Now let's when I say like I wanted to and why I'm suggesting this the IntelliJ here is, so let me add like, and if I just say feature and I just say that a karate DSL demo. Now here I'm saying, see, when I type scenario, I get to see a nice intelligence over here. This is something coming from the Cucumber plugin itself, but it is much more matured when you look at the IntelliJ IDE than Eclipse. I'm not saying Eclipse won't do that. It will do that, but it's much faster and relatively it is very better. It's quite better than in Eclipse. So now I click on the scenario. I just say that write a post service, or just say a scenario to test the HTTP get method. So I'll just write like that. Now, when I say given like this, now when I type like this, now I wanted to type like URL. You see when I type something, I get to see a lot of the type assisted methods or the keywords you get to see. This is a DSL, we call them. And you see URL, string, retry, status number, request, configure. Multi-part is something with respect to the, when you want to do file uploads and things like that. And that is where we get to see this one. And you say status code, it's pretty much like when you make a HTTP GET or a POST, you want to see whether the status code is 200 or not. And URL means is obviously the API endpoint. So for now, let's take this. And so we'll just go to the sample URL, which we already seen the other day. So let me go to the sample URL, that is the request.rest.in. And I go down and I copy this single user, and I copy this one, and I'll just copy this URL and go back to the IntelliJ, and I paste that like this. And then what is that we need to do? So once we say URL is there, what is it we want to do after that? We want to make a post, we want to make a get call. So when I say when method, so what is the method you want to call? HTTP get method. So we will not be able to write HTTP get like that, but we want to just say is get. So this is what we should say, get. When method get. Okay, fine. When we say URL, when we say get, what is it we want to do once we make a get call? We want to validate whether that the get is successful. So that is where we say then, and here we say then, and then we say status. So we're going to type status, and status is like this 200. So that is also now what we are doing is we are going to make a URL call. We are going to make a call to the API endpoint. And when we say the method get, and the status should be 200. So it's as simple as that. So given this, when this, and then I should see the status 200. Now let's try to run this test and see what will happen. Now I ideally, for demonstration, I run it from the, from the IntelliJ IDE. It is not necessary you have to run it from the IDE. You can also run it from terminal like this, and you can just Maven run and the test runner. So this is the runner which we're talking about. So we don't have to look at this at this point of time, but first of all, now let's run from the IDE. I right click and I click on the run scenario. Sorry. And now this is what we get to see. Yeah, now this is what we get to see, like this is the what we see, the the results in the console. So before I think we talked about this earlier, so I want to go to the HTML report and see what is all about this. So I'll open it in a browser, Control T, Control V. And this is what it looks like. Now click on this link and you get to see that this is a HTML report, and you get to see summary, tags, and this is the name of the feature file we are running, and what is the name of the scenario, and what is that the the things we have done here. Like when we make a HTTP request to request.rest.in, and this is what we get. This is the thing. This is what is the endpoint we hit, and these are the default the headers we supplied, and this is the response we got it from the server. Now these are the response headers. We may not be interested to know all the response headers, but there are scenarios, because when I was working in one of the projects, and I see that one of the test case says that when you make a HTTP GET request, and I want to see that mm, the something like this particular CF ray or something should have some value, and we should be able to pull this value and validate in some place. So it could be, a scenario may depend, but it is always good to know that when you make a HTTP request, you will always get a response address, and you should be aware what are the response address you get it over here. And its standard is 200, and it says this is what is the request ID you get, and this is what is the response you get to see over here. So I'll increase a bit the font a bit. Yeah, so reduce a bit. Yeah. So this is what we get to see all the response, and this is how the response we get to see. Let's click on the okay. There's nothing with respect to the status. Status is all 200, and that's the reason it's showing in green. Now here is a one scenario, 0 test cases failed. So that's all about the test report now. Now, but this is not going to really help in our in real world. Like when you're writing the automated test cases using Karate, you may need to do a lot of like assertions, matches, validate the schema, and things like that. So for now, just look at the a very simple thing saying that I wanted to basically assert something like the response is not null. I can just say assert like this, and I can say response, and I say it's not equal to null. Now, what is happening here is this response is the object which is stored globally. I think we talked about this even last time, but I'll quickly run through what is this response. The response is a global object, and we are telling that when you hit this request, I want this response to be not null. So this is a kind of an assertion we are talking about. Now, if you run it again, it does the same thing, but you'll have another step over here, a 3 and followed by 4 after that. So it is done, and now I click on refresh. Now you see the assert response is not null. And you get to see that it took like 0 milliseconds and 4 milliseconds to validate the response is not null. So that's about the very first scenario using get. Now, what else we want to talk about beyond that is something with respect to the some of the keywords. Sorry, some other keywords other than the assert. So there is something called matches as well. So matches is pretty good. You can do a lot many things. Match string, and this is a type assisted thing. You get to see a tip. But let's look at the using match and how we wanted to validate a portion of the JSON schema. Let's go back to the request and what is the response we're getting it over there. So let me bring down this guy a bit. I am not able to fiddle around with this. Yeah, so when I bring this top, I put it down, it's better. Okay. Okay, now this one, we're saying data ID is equal to 2, email and blah, blah, blah. And we're saying first name, and we're saying avatar is something. There are certain attributes we have it. So what we want to do is we want to check whether this ID is always a number. Okay, we want to check that ID is always number. The ID cannot be an or a string or an object or a boolean. So that's the very first requirement we want to check. Now, how do we do it? So we can go to this matches and we can just say response. Okay, and we can say response and say response is the entire object we get to see. Now under the response, we have something called data. In this data, I'll open a JSON validator so that we can get to see, or linter. It looks very easy to understand. Yeah, yeah. So this is what we have a data, and this is a root folder. See, when I collapse this, I don't see anything. And I have a data inside the data. I have a AD, add company URL and text. And these are the two attributes at the root level. This is add data, another one is add. Now let's look at the data. And inside the data, I have an ID. An ID is having a number. So we want to validate whether it is a number or not. So we just say data. Response means everything. Inside that, we traverse to the next level like data. From the data, we want to go to the ID. That is what we reached ID. Now we are saying it should be a number. So we just have to put like this and just say a number, and we just have to say it is ampersand, a pound symbol or a hash symbol. So now let's try to see what will happen when you run that. Okay, so I think let me go back. Yeah, so I think it should be this way. I made it like this. Let's try to run it again. Yeah, it's running. Mm. It should be data.id is equal to this, and we just say it like this number. Okay, so I should put like this, sorry. Yeah, there's a bit of first timers, who is working on, trying to go to use this karate. You may need to do a bit of, hands-on, you may need to get your hands dirty with the code. You may need to probably get uh, used to the syntax or the DSL. Once you get a hang of it, I think it will be very easy. Now, what we're trying to say is, it should be number. So instead of number, we can also say string and things like that. So first now let's fix this and try to run this. All right, so now it is successfully passed. So now if we go back to the report, we just refresh it and I say the match response.data.id is equal to number. So let's say you have a test case like wherein you want to verify the ID should be always number. You can do like this and you can assert that the ID is always number. So let's say let's fail the test. Now let's try to fail the test and put like string here. Now let's see what will happen and see how whether this particular matcher is working correctly or not. So now the test is failed. Now let's go back and refresh this and see what is the failure is all about. See, now you see it says this particular test is failed and showing in red. Now click on that. This is called as a doc string. The doc string says that actual is equal to 2 and expected is string. Reason is not a string. And because of this reason, this particular method is failed. Yeah, so that is all about the very basic get method and how we can write with karate. So let's look into the next part. So what is that we want to talk about today is and let's try writing a post method now. So let's look at the post. It's pretty straightforward. Post is also. Now let's see what is that we want to write a post method. So let's go back to the request rest.in. And here we say, okay, this is what is a post method it says. Now I want to create a user and it says his name of the user is Morpheus and I get the ID as 318 and it says it's created at so-and-so time. Now, this is a request and this is the endpoint URL and this is the payload we're giving. Now let's try to create and let's try to write this test case, this particular scenario in Karate. Let's go back again and I'm saying scenario. And we say create a user using create a user, just say that create a user via HTTP post. Now we say given URL. Okay, so before I say okay, let's try this first, then I'll come to the background step later. So this is the same URL. I'll just copy the same, Control C and Control V. And given when method is post, and before we post, we need to give the response, the payload as well. So that is where we say given and request. So when we say request, you see it says request as a string. So I'll just enter that and I say payload. Okay. Now, what is this payload? We'll write what is the payload is all about. So I'm going to use a wildcard called star and I just say def and I write like this. Okay, so I'll tell you what is all about this. Before that, I'll copy this payload, Control C, Control V, and let me remove the new line character. You can also use new line characters. It's not necessary that you shouldn't be using it. There is a way you can use the new line character. So if you see here, it is showing in brown color. That means it says that the step definition code is not found. So make sure that when you're writing, there should be always a space between the equals to and the one, this is called the payload, it's called the variable. So let's give this. Now, when you add the equals to, when you skip a space between the equals and the JSON payload, you get to see it is turned into the color the way it was, like it says that okay, the step definition is found and you are good to go. So that is what the editor is indicating you. So make sure that you be careful of these kind of spaces when you're writing your DSL code in this feature file. Now, what is all about this? Let's talk about this. So when I say request payload, This is how we define a variable in Karate DSL. So when I say how do I define a variable, I should first call it as a star. Star is like be it could be get, be it could be and, be it could be given, or be could be anything. So we just say star. Star is like a wildcard. So ideal way of defining a variable is we should put a star, and def is the like what we have in Java world, like data types like string, integer, boolean, and things like that. So def is like only one word we have it. There's only one reserved keyword. You have to call for anything and everything is def, be it is an XML file or a JSON file or CSV file. Now you have something called payload. Now this is the name of the variable we're defining. Now what do we have in the payroll? The payroll is having like a very standard JSON format saying that name is Morpheus, and I'm expecting the name of the user or the type of the job of this particular user is a leader. So let's not go with the default example. So I'll just change a bit, and I'm just saying like I'll want to create like Avengers. Okay, name is Avengers, and I say superheroes. Job there is like superheroes. Okay, so Avengers is pretty cool thing. So Avengers superheroes, and what I'm saying is request the request is this payload, and I want to make a post call. Then after that, the status should be what? The status should be 200, or it is saying 201. So pay attention to these kind of status codes. So what I mean, pay attention in the sense you have to always look at the spec file, that is your API spec file, and it says that when you make a post call, you may get 201, you may get 202. Generally, you will not have any response, and 201 is also sometimes you may not have 201 will have response, or sometimes it may not. So make sure that you read the 200 is always good, but I'm just saying like you pay attention to the post response status codes. 201, 202 is also fine, but you cannot just write like status is 200. You may get a failure. So just say status is 201, and now you have like the response. We are not going to validate the entire response. We'll probably again check the ID is or the name is whatever we wanted. And now we are saying, and once we get the status is 201, we want to confirm that the ID is or the job is superheroes. Okay, so let's go back and just say match, and we just say response dot data. Oh, sorry, there's no data. We have like this name, job, ID, they're all at the root level. So that is the reason we just say response dot job is equal to, we just say heroes. Okay. Now let's try to run this feature file now and see what will happen. This is how right click on this and click on this HTTP post. Okay. So it's done. So now I click on this, and now I click on this particular link. I get to see that this is the HTTP post. It says create a user via HTTP post given this URL, and this is a payload we have, and this is what we get to see. And the status code is 201, and this is a payload we've given to the endpoint, and this is what is the response we got from the server. We got the name as Avengers, the superheroes, and the ID and things like that. And now at the end, we get to see status as 201. Let me bring this guy a little bit. Yeah. So now we get to see the state response.job is equal to superheroes. Fine. Now we may get a situation that, okay, I am every time whenever whenever I write a scenario like or a post method, I'm hard coding the job like superheroes like this. I don't want to hard code like this. I want to verify instead of like superheroes looks like it's a redundant job details we're giving it over here. I don't want to probably do this way. So what if I wanted to define like this? I want to say the job is equal to like this. Okay, so I'll just copy this superheroes like this, Control X, Control V, like this. And I want to just use this ampersand like this and like this and like this. This is what is the syntax we need to follow. So hash pound symbol, And in a parenthesis, we should call the name of the variable, that is a job, and that is what we should give. Now, instead of writing as superheroes, I'll just remove this and again, and just put job like this. Now let's try to run this and see whether it will work or not. So what you're trying to do is you're basically removing the redundancy of declaring the variable again and again. So I don't want to define superheroes here. Again, I don't want to validate the superheroes 2 times. So I'll probably define a variable for reusability, for maintenance of this kind of variable. Now, as you see, the test is passed. There's nothing, major changes we have done. We just have to declare a variable called superheroes. And this is how we need to refer. Let's say you have like in the payload, you want to refer a particular variable, you should put a pound, and inside the parentheses, you should call the name of the variable. As simple as that. Okay. Now let's do another bit. So what if I have a large payload? Like I have like a payload which I cannot fit in the one line. I wanted to put that payload in the new line characters as we were talking about. So the other way is I'll just control comment this and I hide put a next line. The other way is I'll do like this and press enter. This is what you do, and this is called as a multi-line string or multi-line doc string, we call it as. So a multi-line string where you'll be able to write anything you wanted. You can write like this kind of step. You can write any number of keywords or any new line characters you wanted to have. So it looks very simple and easy to understand. So let's copy this payload again and paste it over here. So now this time, instead of putting in one line, I'll just do this way so that it's easy for me to read. Now, this is how my payload looks like. Either you can define in one line, you can also define another like this using a multi-line string. We call it as a multi-line string. You can take a look at even in the karate documentation for more details if you're like not very sure, but yeah, but this is how it is. Now let's look at the payload and let's run the same job and see what will happen. Now run it again. It's running. Yeah, the test is passed. So it's as simple as that. Either you can give the payload like this, or you can give the payload in a single line. Okay, now let's refactor a little bit. Instead of saying payload like this, I want to say like the name is, let's make a name like instead of Avengers, we'll probably take some other heroes, or we just say some. Okay, so Avengers. So instead of saying Captain America, okay. All right. So now Captain America, and here instead of saying he's a superhero, okay. And now I want to remove this Avengers, and I want to again refer that the name here, and as simple as that. Now let's try to run this, and I get to see, okay, it is failed. Why that is failed? Okay, I made a mistake here. The mistake here is I'm using a single quote, and here I'm using a double quote, and that is the reason this JavaScript is complaining. Okay, so when I say JavaScript, this JavaScript is coming from the Java JDK 1.8. So for anyone, like if someone wants to use this Karate DSL, the prerequisite is Java JDK 1.8. So we missed that to talk about it. Very important requirement is you should always have a Java JDK 1.8 to have the Karate DSL to work properly in your machine. Otherwise, it won't work. JDK 1.8. The reason we say JDK, the Karate recommends JDK 1.8 is because of Nashon engine. Nashon engine is all about JavaScript. So JavaScript, you can write JavaScript code in Java, and that will allow the syntax will be respected by Java code, and it will run your JavaScript code via Java as well. And this has been introduced in 1.8. So make sure that you have JDK 1.8 and you're good for that. So the reason it's saying is, okay, you've used a single quote and you're using at the end as a double quote. So that's the reason it's complaining. Let's remove that double quote and give it as a single quote. And now try to run this again. And we're saying it as it should pass. Yes, it is passed. Fine, cool. Now, fine, I get to see we refactored a lot here now. We're saying we don't want to give the payload like this, name, job. We're giving it as a job name. But what if I wanted to validate, like I want to print this payload in the console? Like I want to see, okay, fine, we're saying def payload and we are replacing this job and here and name and here, and we're just giving the payload, we are good. But for some reason, I want to validate this payload. I want to check how the payload looks like. So what do I do? In Java, we just say like this sys out, like we just say system.out.println and something like that we do, and we'll be able to see what is that payload is all about, or this particular variable is all about. But instead, Karatip offers you a way you can print the variable to the console in the sense either to this one or to your report. So let's see how you can print that. You can just say star again, or you can just say and. So just remember, guys, so if you don't want to use star, you think it is looking a little ugly or you don't like it to use it, just use and. And is a very harmless keyword, I would say. You can go with the and, I would say, or star. I like to use star because it's easy for me to read. Okay, I can probably, when I look at this scenario, I'll skim through when I skim through, when I go through the scenario, I'll probably ignore the star and I just focus on the and, when, then, and I'll get the, the what is the scenario is doing. So yeah, now let's look at the star and say print, and let's say payload. But before we write payload, I want to write some meaningful message here. The payload is again a single quote, and I have to say plus. There is no space, so it's not necessary you have to give space, but for readability, I'm giving a place plus or a space and this. And here I say the payload like this. Okay, that's all. So I'll increase the font a bit. I think it is fine. Okay. Yeah, let me know if you cannot, see the font, if it is hard to read or see the font here. Yeah. Okay, so now when I say the payload is this payload, and let's look at what will happen. I just make it more meaningful as saying the request payload is the payload. Now let's try to run this. While it runs, I'm just looking at the font size if I can change the font. Okay, I increase the font size to 15. All right. Okay. Now I got the status, the test case is passed. That's obvious. We have not done anything gray. We have not done any modification to the payload. We just added a new variable, a new line called print, and we are printing to the console. Let's look at, instead of looking at this, we can look at the report here. Let's refresh it, and we get to see what is that, the comments and the payload as well. So the comments will always show up like this one. This is the comments in the feature file, and this is a payload as we've seen earlier. And this is what the payload looks like. You see we are having name is equal to pound and name, and job is superhero. But for some reason, we are not able to see the name because of the mistake we have done. It is, we've given a quotes, a double quote here, and that is the reason it did not, it's not showing up correctly. So now let's remove that and remove this as well, the payload. And here, let's try to run it again. Okay, now let's go back and refresh it, and we should see the payload correctly reflected. You see name is Captain America, job is superhero, and we made a post request, and everything is same. So this is one of the ways where you can, print the payload or print the variable to the console and see what the variable is printing to the, and what kind of data we're passing to the Karate at runtime. It comes in handy very well because I find it to be very useful. So you can use this print keyword. Okay, now this is all good. Now let's look at what are the other topics we want to cover today. So we talked about the post method, we talked about the given when then, we print the response, and we also talk about the IntelliSense, some variables, and so we talked about define variables. Okay, let's look at the def text CSV string and all that. Okay, so before that, let's go to before I introduce a CSV or JSON or other keywords. Now let's create a new feature file. We just say it as okay, I'm not able to see that, so let me create Control C Control V, and I just say Karate keywords, or just put that way, Karate keywords dot feature file. And okay, so let me delete whatever I don't want this. Yeah, so I copied the user.feature file. That's okay. So okay, I opened that one only. Okay, sorry, my bad. I got confused. Okay, so let's remove this. Let's remove this as well. And so let's go to the Karate, the documentation, and let's see what is this. The text keyword is. Now, when we say text, it says don't parse and treat it as a raw text. So what happens in a scenarios like, when we're working in a GraphQL testing, we'll come to the later point of time, maybe it's an advanced concept. The reason why we have to use text is we don't want to parse this text. So when we give this kind of text, we are telling the Karate that don't want to parse this text as a JSON file. So let's look at that keyword. So I'll just say keywords, a scenario to validate or to test the Karate keywords. Now I can directly just say, I don't have to give any given when then. We are going to talk about the keywords here. So here you see text is this, and I'm saying test is str or something, and or we can just say or we just say like query. Yeah, let's look at that. And I press like this, and let's copy the one we created here. So I just copy this payload and paste it over here. And instead of saying the name, I'll probably say something like Matt. And here I say, an actor. Okay, Matt Damon. Okay. And now let's print the text. What will happen now? Or before we print the text, let's fail this scenario. I want to, let the Karate to fail this scenario. Now I want to say query dot name, or I just say print the name is like this, and say query dot name. Now let's see what will happen if I run this. So just remember guys, when we wanted to use Karate, it's not necessary that we have to always call the given when then, only then it will work. It is not necessary. You can also use any of the keywords like this, star like this, and text and print. You can use any of the keywords and you can run this as a Karate scenario and see what will happen. So there's no restriction in that part of, in that way. So what we got here is we didn't get anything. So it did not print anything. So it's just a blank. So if I open up this, I click on this, it's nothing. Print the name of the query, or the print the name, query.name is undefined. So the reason is it's not complaining, or it's not throwing any error. We are not doing any validation with this, the query. All we are trying to say is, okay, take the query and do some kind of, just print it to the console. So Karate won't complain. But if I wanted to use this, like for some reason, like instead of Control Z, now if I want to use this for like given a URL like this, okay, and I want to Control C, Control V here, and here, and request payload, or instead of saying this way, I just probably want to give this way a query, or when I say query.name, and I say when method is post and things like that, and I say then the status should be 200. Okay. Now when we run this, you will get a failure. The reason is the query.name, obviously, it is not going to parse this as a JSON string. It is not going to parse this as a JSON format. When we say text, text is all about like treat the query as a regular text, as a regular string. That is what is all about this keyword. We don't want to parse this. We want to just say that this should be only a string. It's not as a JSON or a CSV, whatever the format we wanted. Now, when you run this, it obviously failed. But here we're making some mistake. Intentionally, we are making some mistake. The reason is this is not the valid payload. We are not going to just give query.name. Instead, when we hit this status.method, obviously we won't get 200. We'll probably get some 400 series exception. So the intent is not to show or not to say that this particular this endpoint will fail or this post method will fail. All I wanted to say is when you use text, it won't treat as a JSON, as simple as that. Now let's try to, let's comment this again. Now I will uncomment this, and this time I will change this as a, I'll just give it as a def. Now when I try to run this and see what will happen, it will still pass, but you should get to see the value what we're looking for. We're getting Matt Damon. You see, it is printing the name because we are giving a def. Def is a keyword. When we give the def keyword and it looks at the kind of the format or the kind of the data we give, and Karate learns that, hey, it looks like a JSON. Let me parse that as a JSON, and it stores as a JSON. And when you query for something as a tree, like query.name, and it'll give you the value what you're looking for. So that's about the text keyword. Now let's look at another keyword. What you're interested to know today is, let's go all the way top. And the next keyword is string, JSON. Let's look at this, the CSV keyword. So the CSV keyword is all about, like, if we have a, let's copy this and try to see, what we have it over here. Let's create another scenario. We'll delete this line, or we'll keep it just for reference. And we just say scenario CSV keyword. Now here we say Control V, Control C, Control V. Okay, so now here we're just saying like this. Now when we give the, let's look at the same thing. Name is Matt Damon. So we'll just copy this and put it over here. We just say name, comma, Matt Damon like this. And we just say, and his job is actor. Now here, instead of saying text, I'll probably say is a CSV. Let's look at CSV, what it says. Okay, so we don't have to give this way, it is complaining. So basically we should give like this only. So we just have to say text. And this is how you will be able to parse it. So star CSV and text, or we just say CSV string is equal to text. So we are telling the we are informed the karate that, okay, look, when you read this string, when you read this string from a file or from a from a feature file, transform this as a as a txt. You know what? I think we don't want to do this way, so I'll change a little bit and see if it works the way I'm looking. So let's read like txt instead of that, and let's see what will happen if I Control Z, Control X, and like this. I'll remove this, and here I just give like this. And now I want to see, because when you say text and when you give the text and when we say CSV, it may not work, but we can take a look at it. The reason is when we, as I mentioned earlier, that when we say def, it'll try to look at the what kind of syntax you have, what kind of data you have, and it'll decide it looks like a CSV file. Let me parse the data as a CSV file. So let's try to see what is that we get to see. Okay, let's print that. And I want to print the very first row and see what will happen. And I'll just see for simplicity. I say the first row is this way, and see what we're gonna look at it. Okay. Expected is Matt Damon. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong one. Scenario. Okay. I think I made a mistake somewhere. Okay, so it's basically not allowing us to print. Let's try to see this way what will happen. Just print the text and see. No, you cannot. I think you will not be able to read the row like this. So better way is you have to first define the text as a keyword and just say CSV or text. Make sure that it is a raw. And now we want to transform that to CSV, which is a CSV string is equal to text. And now let's see what will happen if we're trying to print the CSV string is, what the CSV string is all about. This is a very good, interesting exercise. I think what is going to happen is when we give this CSV file, it will not be consumed as a CSV file when it processed. When Karate processes the content, it will not be a CSV file. It will be as a JSON file. Now let's look at it as a JSON string. Now let's look at it. What will happen? Now I gave the text, and I'm telling the I'm telling the Karate CSV keyword that you take this and parse this as a whatever that the CSV's format supposed to be. But when you try to print that, how it looks like. Let's go back to, sorry, not here. And print here and see what will happen. Now, look at here. It is basically transforming this CSV file to a JSON string. So make sure that when you are going to read a CSV file, the output is always a JSON format. So, okay, it looks like it gives you the data in an array of container or an array of elements, because there's only one element, and this is what we get to see. So what if we want to access the an element like actor, or if you want to access the name. So let's look at that. Now, since it's a CSV string, so I don't want to say it's a CSV string, I'll probably say JSON string, because it is transforming it as a JSON string, and I change this just to JSON, and I say JSON string, and I want to let's break this and see what will happen. I want to break this test and see how it looks. Okay, you can see what is the mistake I'm doing. I'm very okay. It is not complaining anything because we're doing a print statement. But you will see undefined according to my, so it is undefined. The reason is there is a mistake. So when we transform the text, this particular text into the JSON string, it won't be a direct JSON. It won't be like the way we have seen earlier. It won't be like this. You will have an array. So it will be like an array like this. So basically this is sitting inside at the 0th position. So you need to you need to refer the 0th position. So that is the reason, you're getting the as the undefined. Now let's try to say dot 0 at the index 0, and at the index 0, I want to print the name. Now let's try to print and see what will happen. Okay, it is passed, but let's see what is that we get. We got job. So the name is a job. So why are we getting name as a job? Oh, okay. I think it's referring like this. So we made a mistake. It should be this way. It should be like this. So the name is Matt Damon. The job is actors, the rows and columns. So this is a column header, and this is the first row where we have the name as Matt Damon and the job is actor. And now let's try to run this and see what will happen. Again, refresh, and we get to see the name as the Matt Damon. Now, what if I don't want to use this 0 every time? Okay, let's say I have another string like this. So let's copy this and I paste like this, like this, like this. So let's have 3. And I put like, instead of saying Matt Damon, I'll probably say, okay, I'm not able to recall some names. I just say some Arnold Schwarzenegger, okay? I put Arnold, and I just say like Matt Damon instead of Matt Damon. I would probably say like Andy Garcia, okay? And we have like, instead of this, and we'll probably put like Mark Wahlberg. He's a pretty good actor, okay? All right. So now when we look at this, we only get, when we look at this particular, the CSV format, and when we want to convert this to JSON, and we only get the 0th element. I want to print all the elements. So to print all the elements, all the names, you can just say like this, JSON star, JSON string, and put a star here. And obviously, it's going to print each and every name. And let's see what will happen now. According to our theory, it should print. It did not print. Okay. So the reason it did not print is, I think we should probably look at like each. There is a syntax called each. So I don't know if it works, but I'm just trying to, the way we use each is here. So we use each like this here. And here we just say JSON string like star dot name. This is the right way of, checking the checking the JSON string. So basically in the print statement, it is not working. So, but I don't know, but let's try this. I don't think so it will work, but let's give it a shot. I think it won't, it's not working. So let's refresh. Yeah, it's not. The evaluation is failed. It is not string line number. Okay, so instead of, sorry. So let's change that to, okay, again, the parentheses. I always get confused with this parentheses. Okay, now let's try to run this again. Run CSV and see what will happen. It will not fail, but you won't get to see what you're supposed to see over here. So that's simple as that. So, but let's say I want to verify that each and every row in the CSV data should be string. So let's comment this out. And now I want to check if it is string or not. So we are seeing that it is passing a string. But what if I want to give it as, there is a bad data in your code? Instead of saying Andy Garcia, the name of the name is like 909. Now when I try to run, see what will happen. Okay, still passing. That's interesting. Okay. I think it's getting transformed as a JSON, sorry, as a string, and that is the reason we are not able to, see the format what you're looking at it. But ideally, if you do this way, and we comment this, and now when we do this way and see what will happen. Okay, there is no JSON string and it will fail. One moment. I'll just make it as a text here, like this, and see what will happen. Okay, it has failed. why it is failed. Uh, okay, so it's not able to refer this. Hmm. Okay, so I think we should definitely transform this as a CS, sorry, again, text. And this one is like this. For some reason, sorry. Okay, so I think the reason it's not working is could be that. Now let's try to see for the last time, and if not, I'll probably take a look at this scenario later, and we'll talk about this in the next session. So the reason why we're looking at this is just to filter out some bad data. So when we have the data stored in a CSV file or a JSON file, I wanted to apply some rules and see whether we have a good data or not, whether we have an endpoint, and when we are trying to fetch the response, you want to ascertain every column or every row under a name saying that it should be always a string. That's all about, that's all about this type of scenario. So let's try to run this again. Okay, it's still failing because of some mistake I'm doing. I'll probably look at it, never mind. So it is not important at this point of time, but uh, all we are trying to say is when we give the raw text, we'll be able to parse the JSON string or transform the text into CSV like this, and we'll be able to pass this as a CSV as a JSON format. So it's a kind of transformation happening with the simple keywords. So that's all about this keyword. Now let's look at some other content. Let's see what we have in the agenda today. Okay, we talked about the def, text, CSV, JSON. We talked. We'll look at this XML table keywords when we are dealing with the the SOAP and the other, for the request types. That's a SOAP request type. In 2.2, we looked at the post scenario, how to provide a payload. We want to use how to use an external data for a service and create a post service by reading the test data. Okay, this is a very interesting one. So we'll just look at it. We may need another, we're going to spend another maybe 20 minutes, and after that we'll open for questions, maybe 15 or 20 minutes. So now let's go back to the scenarios. Instead of saying demo get, I'll rename this as demo get and all and go post. And here I'll copy paste and I create post with keywords like that. Now let's open this and let me copy this post scenario again. Copy this, go to the post, remove everything we don't want. We paste it here. Okay, we remove the whatever we don't want, and even so one thing I did not talk about is background. Now if you look at it, the other feature file, if you look at the other feature file, every time we are calling the given URL like this, and we're also calling the given URL like this, so there is a repetition in our URL. We are calling request.rest.n at API and users, and here also the same thing, just that this 2 is changed here in the get scenario. So instead of creating or instead of having the URL every time in your in a scenario, you have two options here. What are the two options is either you can just say URL is equal to like this. You can copy this URL, Control X and paste it over here. Oh, sorry, we can just paste like this. And here, instead of saying URL, you can directly say given path. Now here in this path, we can just say that I want to look at the path like 2. So it will go to this URL and hit this, append this path to 2, and it proceeds with the rest of the action. But in our case, we don't want to even take out the API. We'll cut this API because what if I have API and tomorrow I have UI? So like UI or API. So for that reason, I want to keep the domain name as generic as possible, and I want to give the path here like this. So it's like this when we see this way. So we give the URL and given path API, and then you can continue with your API, the scenario. So this is a one way of giving the URL in the background. Now, what if I don't want to give the URL in the background? I say, okay, no, I'm okay with this, but I want to give it as a base URL. So that is where we go to the config.js file. Now, what we do in the config.js file is there's a whole lot of code over here. This is all JavaScript. Now, what we are saying is there is a var keyword. This is a variable keyword in JavaScript. So var, let, constant, they're all JavaScript keywords. And so var means like which is basically available in the global space, like a local scope, block scope, global scope. We have a lot of scopes in any programming language per se, but we have this var means as a global scope. We were saying karate. Karate is also another. Karate is also one which sits in the global scope. So karate is also in global scope. So now you can just give karate.env, and we are saying that get the system property karate.env. So when you would have probably seen every time we run our test cases, we always see that the karate .env is basically an empty. So we don't have it here, but we generally get to see that the environment is always an empty. So if you look at here in the console, it should probably complain. Yeah, it says that info karate.env system property was empty. We did not give anything, and that is the reason we're having this statement printing. So this karate is global again, and here we say env. Now here we're saying if environment is not equal to, if there is no environment, just assign it to dev. And this is what is a kind of an object we call config object. And we talk about like what is the values we want to give, like something which stores at the global level. Now here we just say base URL, and I go to copy that this, you cut this and paste it over here, and I'm done. Now I go back to my post method or post keywords, or just say base URL, as simple as that. Now, when we do this way, this config is going to be returned by the karate, and this config is basically stored in the global space. And anything you access from here, it will be like if I say name, I say karate demo, okay, and this is available in globally. So anytime, anywhere you can use this. Now I don't have to refer like config dot name or config dot base URL. Now I can just say here, when I say URL like this, base URL, it will go and fetch the value from here, and it will work just like that. So now I can also say def print. The name is, just for demonstration, the name is, I can just call the name. When I say name, it goes and checks the name here. Okay, I'm just going to print that name like that. And now, so every time, let's look at the actual, what we wanted to, and I want to show over here is, we are storing the payload. We are giving the payload like this. We have seen how to refer the variables. It's pretty interesting. What if I don't want to give this way? I don't want to refer like this. I want to put them in an examples or in a data-driven test. So for that, we will use something called outline. So scenario outline, it's complaining that there is no example section. Let's create that example section. And now here we say name, and here we say the job, and next line. I think we all know this about the scenario outline examples, pretty straightforward. There is okay, this is a job and name. This is the name and job, okay, whatever. And here we say as the Captain America, and just control paste, cut, paste, and it should be, what's the next thing is superhero, cut this again, paste over here. So that's it. Now this is what is the, let's format it. I think there is a way we can format it. I don't know if we can do the pretty print. We call it as a pretty print. Folding, analyze. Okay, I think it's yeah, I remember doing that in the in the other editor, or maybe it's an old version of, yeah, let's save it. Okay, it's not doing anything. That's fine. I'll just manually do that. Okay, now this is a pretty straightforward. Let's remove this. Let's keep that one, and we'll remove this piece, and we go here at the top, and instead of saying the name like this, we just refer this name, and instead of that, we just say job. Now, you can create any number of rows. I think we all know that this is a classic data-driven, example. Antman, you can just say like Antman. Okay, so you can create any number of users you want. So the payload looks pretty straightforward. We're saying name, job, and this is what is being referred from here. And let's try to run and see what will happen, because we have done some changes here. We are telling background that go look at this base URL, and we're given some name called name in the config.js file. And I want to see what will happen to the name. But before to the name, we'll do a little bit another change here. Let's add some stuff here. We say the environment also, we change it to if it is dev, we'll just remove this, and I want to customize this like this. So we just say that karate.log, and I'll just copy this again, and yeah, we'll just say that the karate environment is env. We don't have anything, but here I would say karate dot. Let's give it the default environment like this one. If karate.env, we're just saying it is equal to dev, and here we just say karate env is equal to env, and let's say if it is dev, I just want to say found the env as dev. And you can also change the URL like this, config.url is equal to, and you can give the URL as a new URL. You can just probably say as a base URL, sorry. You can give this base URL, and I can copy this and paste it here as a different environment. Like I can just say that this is a dev res request dot res.in, and like that. So you can alternate, you can change that, and it should work the way we wanted. Now, let's try to run this, see what will happen. Right click, run this. Okay, this is a syntax error. Okay, so there's a syntax error. It says this syntax error is all about, there is a mistake we made. It says expected comma, but found something. So let's go to the karate config.js file. The reason is we have not given a comma here. So we just have to give a comma here because this is an object. This is a JavaScript object. An object is consist of properties and methods and many more things. So that is the reason we have to give a comma. We have to give a comma. Now let's try to run this again and just say run this and see what will happen. Okay, we got a failure. That is obviously we get the failure. If you look at this URL, you see it's pointing to dev-request.in.api. The reason why we're getting the problem here is we're saying karate.env is equal to this, and it says if there is no environment, just assign the environment variable to dev. And that is the reason we have this. Now, instead of saying if there is no environment, we want to assign it to the dev, I don't want to assign it to the dev. I want to assign it to the QA. Okay, so I just say QA like this. And instead of this one, I would say else if env is equal to QA, and I want to do a little more different. Now, what is it I want to do here is, I'll just copy this again. I paste it over here. I'll change this to URL as a QA URL, and here I just say QA. Okay, so we are telling Karate that if there is no environment, just assign the default environment to QA, and then it assigns some, it creates some kind of a default object, and with this particular variables, and it does some kind of checks over here, validation logic, conditional logic. And if the environment is QA, you just sys out to this QA and change the base URL is equal to like this one. Now let's try to see now what will happen. Okay, so let's go to the post keywords again. I try to run this. It should definitely change. Now, yes, it is going. Now we got a failure, but what is a failure? We'll look at it later. But all I want to show here is this HTTPS request.rest.in.api, it's all working correctly. So there's nothing wrong over there. Now let's look at what is a failure here. So what is a failure here is, let's go down all the way down. I think it looks like something with respect to the syntax. Okay, the very first one, it says we did not get 201, but we got 404. Probably we made some mistake. What's the mistake we made? So let's look at the post payload. So we are saying Captain Name America job superhero, and we got this as a response. So it's interesting that we're getting a response like this. And so let's look at what is the problem over here. Okay, so let's bring it down a bit. And we got name, job is correct. There's nothing wrong there. It should be like this, or we're not doing anything crazy. But before we do that, let's look at this name, whether the name is printed correctly. Yeah, the name is printed as Captain America. Okay, the name is basically coming from here. So that's another thing. So instead of saying name, we'll probably say something like global name or something. And now we just copy this and paste it over here. You should get the global name, but we still have a problem here. So let's change this to this way. It should ideally work. I know it's not working here.
Sai, we lost you. Folks, just give me a minute, okay?
Hello, I'm back. Sorry, there was a disconnect and I got disconnected from the. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, it's audible now.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I got disconnected. Okay, now what you're saying is we have a name and job, and because of that it failed. Let's try to look at the Ant-Man again and try to create this and see now what is going to happen. So interesting. It's going through. It still failed, but probably the header, we are not giving the header correctly. And that is the reason it is throwing this. It's saying the status code is 400 request.run. Oh, okay. I think the reason why we're getting this error here is we are missing an important path over here. So users, we should definitely give users. And that is the reason we're having this problem. So let's remove this codes. There's nothing to do with the codes. So we have actually made a mistake with the, the resource path. The resource path is like base URL, like this is a base URL, https request.rest.in, and we have API, and after API we have users. So if you go back to the browser or the spec says clearly that we should use while creating the user, we should use users. We did not use the users, and that is the reason it was failing. So we didn't pay attention there. Okay. So let's now again run this and see what will happen. Let's finish this and we'll open for questions. It should pass. Yes, wonderful. It's passed. Now let's go back to the scenario. Yeah, this is control. Yes, there you go. We got two scenarios. The very first scenario is all about creating the user with this payload, that is Captain America, and another request payload we gave is Ant-Man, and both the scenarios are successful, and we get to see the status is 201 and everything is same. Now, what we are interested to see here is whether this name is coming up or not. You see the name is coming up. We're saying the global name is Karate Demo. Now, if you go back and check in the config.js file, we see given this as a name as karate demo. So like this, we should be able to change anything you wanted. By default, you give this value. And if it is a QA, we want to change the name to something else. You can also change like config dot global name is equal to, you can just say karate QA demo, and you can, and when the moment when it is QA, you can alter the values based on your type of environment. So it's just as simple as that. Now, if you refresh it again, it's refreshed, and we see it as a karate QA demo. So one moment. Yeah. So yeah, so as simple as that, if you can change the type of the environment, and you can manipulate the variables how you want it. And the background, we still have the background information is not printed, but we only look at these doc strings. That's it we wanted. The other point I want to show here is the sysout statement which we are printing over here. We're saying found the environment as QA. That is what we are printing over here. If it is QA, we want to print the name as QA, or we want to log it to the console, and this is what we get to see. So karate is a global namespace. There is not only log, there are many more methods under this namespace called karate. But for our interest for today, we can look at this log is sufficient enough. Now, the last thing before we just open up a question is I want to create a JSON file or a CSV file, and I want to see how we can refer this data there. So let's create a sample CSV file. We just say test data.csv, and I would say install plugins. I don't want the Excel reader. I don't want this CSV. Let's see what I just want to install it. Okay, I'll install it later. I think it'll definitely ask me to restart it. So that's okay. So what we got here is name and job. So let's copy that name and job and put them in the test.csv file, name, job, and I have a name as Captain. Okay, let's copy that. I want to type it again. So Control C, Control V, and remove the space. Remove the space over here, comma, remove this, and here we say comma. That's it. Save it. This is a header. This is a row value of this is the name of the first row name and first row job, and similarly Sandman and superhero under these name and job. Save it, close it. Now you may ask me a question that why should I create a CSV file? Why I don't want to use this way? The reason is if we have the data, test data like this, like I can create any number of rows. Now, if you look at this kind of examples or the data we're giving it here, it's like the number of the test data sets, what we're giving, it's like very, very big. Sorry. We have a lot of yeah. So instead of giving the keywords or the data sets like this one, it may look a little a clutter on it. It may not look so well or so neat, and the readability also lacks over here. So that is the reason we are telling the karate DSL that, okay, don't want to read the data like this. I want to refer a CSV file which is having like hundreds or thousands of rows, and I don't want to really give all the 1,000 rows over here. It looks very bad. And so that is the reason for readability, I wanted to, instead of giving this way, I want to give like, just say that instead of doing this way, I take out this and I just say it like this way and just say CSV And let's look at I just want to refresh the CSV syntax. So that is the reason I'm looking at that. So it's been, so the CSV scenario outline is scenario outline. Okay, data-driven scenario outline is, okay, I'm dynamic kittens. Okay, either I can do this way or yeah. So let's do this way. So let's look at let's copy this and maybe I'll put this here. So I would say the test data, and instead of saying the JSON, we have a test data file. So we just say test data.csv file. Now this is a test data. When I say test data.csv file, it basically reads the test data.csv file and transform it as a JSON file. So now I'll copy that. So here, I don't want the payload like this. I'll just remove the payload. And this is also not needed for us. And this is also not required. Or maybe we'll have it. We'll just get to see how the payload is basically getting printed. And now, say the test data is like this. And here we just say this test data, CSV or JSON, or we just say like test data like this. Yeah, that's all. Yes, kittens request is name. Yeah, let's try this and see what will happen. Now test data, this is the payload. Okay, I need to print this guy a little top. Yeah, because when we give the path, we want to request the payload and the print this payload, and the method is post 201 and see. Let's see what will happen now. So if you have this test data file outside somewhere, you need to probably give like 2 forward slashes, and you need to give a relative path to refer that specific file. Although you can, if you have it inside the Java folder, like under this Java folder, or you have like a folder like this. Let's say I don't like to maintain the data, right next to my feature file. I can create like test data, and I can, as long as you have this test data folder under this src test Java, you can just say s class path like this, and you can just pull this here. Yes, refactor. And we have the test data.csv file. Instead of giving test data, I'll just rename it a little, to a meaningful name. I just say payload data. And now I go back to this feature file, and I just say test data / and I just say payload data .csv file. Okay, so let's try to run this. If it works well and good, we will talk a little more detail sometime in the next session. Well, for now, let's try to run this and see. Okay, so let's run this. What's the error? Payload is not defined. Okay, so this is a test data. I think, let's see. I'm also a bit, it's been a while. I'm kind of getting unfamiliar with this. However, let's see if it is not working. We should be able to see this is test data here. Let's see what will happen. Can you hear me? Hello. It looks like there is an unstable connectivity. Hello. I get
Yes, it's audible.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Sorry. Yeah. So I'll figure this out. I think there's a bit of there's a syntax of which I need to probably go through. It'll probably take another minute or so, or maybe a few minutes. So we already have like 15 minutes. I'll stop now, and we'll go through this feature file sometime next week or the next session. Yeah. Thank you. I'll stop for now, and we'll open for questions.
Yeah. Thanks, Sai. So we are open for questions. If anyone's have questions, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Is anyone having any questions?
I hope I did not sing a lullaby.
Sai, can you hear me?
Yes, 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 please.
It's Shiva here.
Yeah, hey, Shiva.
I'd like to make a request actually.
Uh-huh.
We have gone through the implementation of the whatever you explained today, right? If you
Okay.
don't mind, because it's been like, if you can give a kind run into it once again, that would be nice, I guess, because if you don't mind, because it was new thing to us and it was very quick. And if you can give the one rundown entirely and probably 5 minutes entirely.
Okay. Okay. You want me to run through again the
If you don't
entire?
mind, yeah, the process,
Okay.
whatever you told today, and it will be, if you can be quick also, it is fine, but we can have some idea again, right? So,
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Because
oh,
if I start that, it'll probably take another 5 more minutes. But if you have any other short question, please voice out. Otherwise, I'll start the just recapping or recap the entire the content what we have gone through today.
that's all from my side, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Sure, Shiva. Thank you. Anyone else?
How
Any
do
other
we set
questions?
the environment?
We set the environment in the config.js file.
But env is what we are getting here is env is not set, right? When env is not set, it is pointing to there by
Okay.
default.
Yeah. So that's a good question. So what we do ideally here is we can either go to this edit configuration and we can give the VM options over here. Like, you can just say DENV is equal to or QA, you can just give here. Ideally, we won't run it from the feature file, like, from the IDE. But if you want to do so, you can just give a DE minus the DENV is equal to QA, and it will work just like the way, our Java world is. Otherwise, you can also go to the terminal and you can just say Maven clean test, or if you have a test runner, this is what is the test runner we have. We can just say Maven test, and you can just say minus DENV is equal to QA. So that's the way you can specify the environment type.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anything else? Any other questions? If you don't want even that, you can also probably set over here. I think we can also try .env is equal to QA. You can also do this way. Sorry. I think it won't allow. It's not allowing. You can probably do it over here. Star DFENV is equal to QA. I've not tried it, but if you don't like to give it in the in the system properties, where you can give it. But if you do this way, the reason is it may or may not be respected, because if you look at it, he's always getting the Karate is always looking for system property. The system property, the way you give it is only from the VM arguments. So the correct way is this way, and that should do your job. Okay, so if we don't have any questions, so I'll quickly go through and I'll recap what we talked about it today. Okay, yeah, so today we talked about how we can write HTTP GET, and this is a URL. We hit an endpoint. This is a GET. This is a syntax called given URL. There is a when method. The status is 200, and this is how you should write, like assert or match. Response is not equal to null. That means when we hit this, we'll get the response, and it is stored in a variable called response, and response as a global object, and it says is equal to not null, and you have the match dot response dot data dot id. That means when we wanted to evaluate or validate the schema, we wanted to check that id is not equal to a number, or sorry, it's not equal to string, it should be number. So we write the syntax like response dot data, that is response dot data dot id, that is dot id, and it should be a string. When we say it is a string, it will fail. It is a number, so we change this to a number. So that's how we write the assertions, and that's how we write the Yeah, that's how we write the number over here. And now you have another scenario we talked about is how to make a post call. We can give an URL, same thing. Def is a keyword, is a variable, is a keyword argument where we give the job name, where we give the variable as a job and the name as another variable. We can give a string, we can give anything, a number, boolean, or an object. I'm not tried with object, but let's make it simple to give it as a number or a string or a boolean. And as I mentioned before, that we wanted to have Java JDK 1.8. Nashon engine is built into 1.8 and is pretty much is a mandatory requirement if you want to use Karate DSL. And so we have payload to be given in multi-line string format, or we can give it in a like this as well. That is a straight one single line without any carriage returns. If you have carriage returns without, if you don't give this multi-line string, you will have a problem. It won't work. You'll get syntax issues. If you don't want to, if you want to have the payload in a line by line, you give it as a multi-line string like this, and that's the way you can define the payload the way we want. And this particular pound symbol and the name is all about like referring the variables you define it in your scenario. Like say I've defined a job name, and how do I refer them? I have to give a pound or a hash and put it in a parentheses. Similarly for job. And how do you want to print the payload? If you're interested to know how to print the payload, you can just say star print and the request payload is blah, 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 whatever the payload you wanted. And the next thing is you have a request method. And the last thing is all about like, I want to check the response is the payload. Yeah. Yeah, so mandatory requirement, when I say Java JDK 1.8, it is not necessary that if you have a Java JDK 11 or any other version, you're good. The minimum version is Java JDK 1.8. Anything greater than Java JDK 1.8 is required. So just keep that in mind. If you have a JDK 11, you're good. But there is a Java JDK, I think 12 or maybe 13. I think it's still not supported. I think anything till 11 or 12, you're good. But make sure that you have a greater than or equal, greater than 1.8 or greater than or equal to 1.8. Okay. So that's about the keywords and how to make a HTTP post call. Then let's look at the keywords. We talked about the keywords. The keywords are a very interesting thing. So let me close this terminal. Yeah, so the keywords are like you have a query, and this is how we define the keyword with the variable with the keyword called def. And we looked at the CSV, we looked at the text. So anything you want to process the text as a raw, you should give it as a text. So this text is when we say text, we indicate the Karate that don't process it, don't format that, just take the way you read it. And after that, you want to transform that as a CSV. And the CSV is basically, once it reads the CSV, it will be transformed as a JSON file. It is going to transform. So just remember that the CSV is getting transformed to JSON file. Okay, transform to JSON string. So you should make sure that it is no longer will be a CSV when it is processed by Karate. Yes, it'll learn that you have a CSV file, but eventually or at the end, it will transform as a JSON string, and that is what we get to see over here. So this will probably we look at it later. Like I wanted to print only we call it the data outliers in the data science world. We call it as a data outliers. We don't want to have any bad data in your test data. So I have a bad data here. What is a bad data here is a number we have in the name. So I wanted to filter them out or throw an error before I really do or make a post or a get call. So that is the thing I was trying to do it, but we will probably never mind. We'll do that later. So that's about the transformation over here. And then we looked at the other one is about the key post call and how we want to read the data. So we have the data stored in a specific folder like test data, and this is where the test data here is. The reason we are maintaining the test data in a separate folder is we don't want to have the examples, or we don't want to have the examples and the scenario outline, like many number of rows, it may look little awkward or not awkward. It may look little and it may lack readability. And that is the reason we wanted to store the data in a CSV file. Now, the beauty of this Karate is when we give this test data and the examples, it will dynamically explode at runtime, and it'll understand this particular scenario need to run for various number of data sets. And that's how it works. So you can just call this as a read. There is no parser we have written to read a CSV file, no Java code you have written today. I think you would have seen that I'm not return a single line of Java code. It's all about the Karate. It's all about the Karate DSL and the the keywords what we played around. We have not touched anywhere in the code. Okay, so yes, there's a background noise. Ignore. Sorry for that. Now we have to give the syntax like class path, test data, and the payload data or CSV file. If you have the data somewhere, you have to give this way. Read is a keyword, and so we can also, this is not required. And once we give the data, we're going to refer the test data over here, and we want to basically make a call and see whether the data is, the request is successful or not. So this was not successful. We were not able to make, create it. But with the next session, we will take a look at fix this, and we'll see how we can supply the data from another external file and see how we can create the resources on the server side. So that's it pretty much today. And thank you for joining the session. If you have any questions, we have 3 minutes. Otherwise, you have a good Sunday.
Okay, Sai, I think there are no further questions. I don't see any questions coming up. Okay, so I just wanted to share my screen, Sai. Can I take it over?
Yeah, good.
Okay. So just a last minute before we say before we part away our ways on this Sunday, guys. Just wanted to show this video. All right. So yeah, just wanted to show that and share that. We have a lot of things in the upcoming weeks. So if there is anything that you would want us to present in the next upcoming weeks, please reach out to us. You have our meetup group. Just in case if you are not aware, we have a meetup group. You can go to Google and search for testing and DevOps group meetup, and the first result should be coming up is our meetup group. So you can join that meetup group and to follow up for the upcoming sessions. So that's it. Thanks.
Kaja, yeah, the session is started since when? Like, since when is this going on? Because I joined it today.
Started last week. Yeah, it started last week. So last week was introduction, but the same has been covered today also. So even if you have missed last week, that should be still fine. We have a recording. So we'll be sharing that recording as well. This video is also has been recorded, so we'll share this video as well.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Sai. We'll catch you next week.
All right.
Same time, Sunday at 9:30 a.m. IST to 11:30 a.m. IST. Thanks, everyone. Have a safe Sunday. See you next Sunday. Bye.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.